Lewis Hamilton is reportedly furious because Ferrari may have just lost the one innovation capable of changing the entire future of Formula One. And the FIA did not ban a small upgrade. They targeted the exact system Ferrari secretly built their whole next-generation project around. A hidden aerodynamic concept so powerful, insiders estimate it was worth up to half a second per lap. Half a second. In Formula One, that is not an advantage. That is destruction. That is the difference between dominating Sundays or watching Red Bull disappear into the distance before the race is even halfway over. And here is where this story becomes absolutely explosive. Ferrari reportedly redesigned huge sections of the SF26 just to make this concept work. The transmission, the rear packaging, the airflow around the entire back of the car. Then rival teams saw the numbers. Mercedes panicked. McLaren reacted. Red Bull immediately started exploring similar concepts. And the moment the paddock realized Ferrari may have discovered the next major breakthrough in Formula One, the FIA suddenly moved toward banning the whole thing for 2027. Now, the atmosphere inside Ferrari is reportedly becoming unbearable because Hamilton did not leave Mercedes to join another rebuilding project. He joined Ferrari believing they were building a championship machine capable of making history again. But this gets even worse. The FIA is not stopping with one restriction. They are also targeting Ferrari's halo winglets, tightening engine regulations, and closing multiple loopholes Ferrari exploited more aggressively than anyone else on the grid. And inside the paddock, one question is spreading incredibly fast. Did Ferrari actually break the rules? Or did they simply build a car so advanced that Formula One panicked the moment everyone else started falling behind? At first, almost nobody outside Ferrari understood what they were really seeing. That is what makes this entire situation so explosive now. Because when Ferrari introduced the flick tail mode concept, most people inside Formula One treated it like another clever experiment. Interesting, aggressive, but probably too complicated to become a true championship weapon. Then the performance numbers started circulating inside the paddock. And suddenly everything changed. Because Ferrari was not finding small gains. They were finding the kind of advantage teams spend years chasing and almost never discover. The system used hot exhaust gases to accelerate airflow underneath the rear diffuser, increasing rear stability and aerodynamic efficiency at the same time. Now, that sounds extremely technical, but the effect on the car was actually very simple. It gave drivers confidence, and confidence in Formula One is priceless. Imagine driving on a wet road at full speed. The rear of the car feels nervous. Every corner feels unpredictable. Then suddenly the car becomes completely stable exactly when you push hardest. That is essentially what Ferrari created. More rear grip, more balance, more trust at the limit. And for Lewis Hamilton, that changes absolutely everything. Because one of Hamilton's biggest struggles in recent years has been unstable rear-end behavior. Cars that snap unexpectedly during corner entry. Cars that force him to hesitate instead of attacking naturally. In Formula One, hesitation kills lap time instantly. Ferrari believed they had finally solved that problem. And according to the report, the internal estimates were terrifying for the rest of the grid. Conservative calculations already suggested around 0.2 per lap. But Ferrari reportedly believed the system could deliver gains approaching half a second under ideal conditions. Half a second. That is enormous in modern Formula One. To understand how huge that advantage really is, imagine two Olympic runners racing side by side, except one athlete secretly starts several meters ahead before the race even begins. That is what half a second feels like at the front of Formula One. And Ferrari was so convinced by the concept that they rebuilt major parts of the entire SF26 around it. The team reportedly redesigned the transmission layout just to integrate the system correctly. That is not a normal upgrade. That is a complete engineering commitment. Because changing transmission architecture affects almost every area of the car. Weight balance, suspension behavior, cooling, packaging, reliability. Everything becomes connected. Teams do not take risks like that unless they believe they have discovered something revolutionary. And Ferrari clearly believed exactly that. But here is where the story becomes even more intense. The system was not free in terms of performance. Ferrari reportedly sacrificed engine power to make the concept work properly, with estimates suggesting losses of several horsepower because the exhaust flow became partially restricted. And Ferrari still considered the trade worth it. That tells you how powerful the aerodynamic benefit truly was. But Formula One never allows secrets to survive for long. The moment rival engineers realized Ferrari may have discovered a breakthrough, panic spread across the paddock. Mercedes reacted immediately. McLaren started experimenting. Red Bull joined the development race. Suddenly, multiple teams were trying to copy Ferrari's concept before Ferrari could fully dominate with it. And ironically, that may have triggered Ferrari's greatest nightmare. Because once several teams begin aggressively chasing the same loophole, the FIA starts seeing danger. Not only in performance, in politics, in development costs, in the possibility of another full-scale aerodynamic war taking over Formula One. And that is exactly when Ferrari's greatest innovation suddenly became the center of one of the biggest technical controversies the sport has seen in years. What happened next is exactly why the atmosphere inside Ferrari reportedly became explosive. Because from Ferrari's perspective, this stopped looking like normal regulation management and started looking like Formula One reacting out of fear. The moment rival teams realized how dangerous Ferrari's concept really was, discussions about banning it suddenly accelerated behind closed doors. And inside the paddock, timing like that changes everything. Think about the sequence carefully. Ferrari spends months developing a breakthrough. The system works. The lap time gains become impossible to ignore. Mercedes starts investigating similar concepts. McLaren reacts. Red Bull reacts. Then suddenly, just as the entire grid begins chasing Ferrari's idea, the FIA moves towards shutting the whole thing down before 2027. That is why tensions inside Ferrari reportedly exploded. Because Ferrari believes they followed the regulations exactly as written. They did not fail inspections. They did not hide illegal components. They simply interpreted the rules more aggressively than everyone else. And Formula One has always rewarded teams willing to think differently first. That is how dynasties begin in this sport. The double diffuser era, ground effect breakthroughs, flexible aerodynamic concepts. Every dominant team in Formula One history started because somebody discovered something the rest of the grid did not understand quickly enough. Ferrari believed the flick-tail mode was their version of that moment. But according to the report, Ferrari now stands almost completely isolated politically, with 4 out of the 5 engine manufacturers reportedly willing to support the ban. And political isolation inside Formula One can become catastrophic, because championships are not won only through engineering. They are also won through influence, private negotiations, technical alliances, pressure behind closed doors. Sometimes the biggest battles happen far away from the racetrack. And Ferrari fans have already seen this exact situation before. Back in 2020, Ferrari suffered major performance losses after FIA technical directives targeted areas surrounding their engine philosophy. Ferrari itself later admitted the team lost part of its competitive edge after adapting to those changes. Now people inside the paddock are quietly comparing the current situation to that exact period. And that comparison should genuinely terrify Ferrari. Because Formula One history shows something brutal. When a team builds an entire project around one revolutionary concept, removing that concept rarely hurts only one part of the car. Everything starts changing at the same time. Balance changes. Tire behavior changes. Driver confidence changes. Development direction changes. And sometimes the entire project slowly begins collapsing from the inside before fans even realize what is happening. That is exactly why Lewis Hamilton's frustration reportedly feels so intense right now. Because Hamilton knows this may be his final realistic championship opportunity. Every season matters more now. Every regulation cycle matters more now. Every technical decision matters more now. He did not leave Mercedes searching for another rebuilding process. He joined Ferrari because he believed they were finally building something capable of beating Red Bull consistently. Something revolutionary. Something dangerous. And now, before that future even fully arrives, the FIA is already removing critical pieces of the foundation. That emotional pressure changes everything inside a Formula One team, especially inside Ferrari. Because Ferrari is not just another team on the grid. Ferrari carries pressure differently, expectation differently, failure differently. And the deeper investigators looked into Ferrari's philosophy, the more another controversial area of the car started attracting FIA attention. The halo. Because Ferrari was not only finding speed at the rear of the car, they were finding performance almost everywhere the regulations left even the smallest opening. The deeper the FIA investigated Ferrari's philosophy, the more one thing became impossible to ignore. Ferrari was not relying on one isolated innovation. They were building an entire car around exploiting every tiny opening inside the regulations before anyone else could react. And nowhere was that more obvious than around the halo. Now, most fans see the halo as a safety structure, the protective frame above the driver's head that has already saved lives multiple times in Formula One. But Ferrari saw something completely different. They saw airflow. They saw untapped aerodynamic potential. And they saw free performance hidden inside an area most teams treated cautiously. Ferrari introduced small aerodynamic winglets near the base of the halo, redirecting airflow around the cockpit toward critical performance zones of the car. On television, the pieces looked tiny, almost irrelevant. But in Formula One, tiny details create massive consequences. Think about an airplane wing. A tiny change in airflow can completely alter balance, stability, and efficiency. Ferrari understood that every millimeter of clean air matters when the fastest cars in the world are separated by hundredths of a second. And this is where Ferrari became incredibly aggressive. The new regulations introduced a narrower central halo pillar, creating extra legal space around the structure. Ferrari immediately exploited that opening before most rivals fully understood its potential. That detail says everything about Ferrari's current mentality. Most teams read regulations trying to avoid mistakes. Ferrari read them searching for hidden opportunities. And eventually, the FIA realized something dangerous could happen if this continued. Because once one team discovers aerodynamic performance inside a safety structure, every other team is forced to follow. Suddenly, the halo stops being purely about protection and becomes another expensive aerodynamic battlefield. That is reportedly one of the main reasons the FIA now wants those concepts restricted for 2027. But Ferrari's problems do not stop there. Because while the paddock focused on the aerodynamic controversy, another technical battle was quietly developing inside the engine itself. And this one could become even more damaging long-term. The FIA has already tightened regulations surrounding engine compression ratios, confirming that no power unit can exceed a 16:1 ratio under real operating conditions. Now, that sounds deeply technical, but the basic idea is actually simple. Imagine compressing a spring tighter and tighter before releasing it. The more efficiently energy is compressed, the more power can be extracted afterward. Modern Formula One engines work in a very similar way. And according to the report, Ferrari invested heavily into an aggressive engine philosophy built around pushing those limits harder than rivals. At first, FIA checks only measured compression while engines were cold. But starting from June 1st, the Federation will also measure those values under hot operating conditions, where real performance differences appear during racing. That changes everything, because some systems behave completely differently once temperatures rise during actual race conditions. And suddenly Ferrari finds itself under pressure from every direction at the same time. Rear aerodynamics, halo airflow concepts, engine interpretation, future regulation votes, political isolation, all while Lewis Hamilton prepares for what may be the final championship window of his career. And this is why the atmosphere inside Ferrari reportedly feels so tense right now. Because Ferrari did not build this project expecting half the foundations to become controversial. They genuinely believed they were building the future of Formula One. Now they are watching the FIA slowly close every opening they discovered before rivals could fully catch up. And hanging over all of this is one race, Canada. Because Ferrari can still legally use every one of these systems there. Which means the Canadian Grand Prix suddenly becomes much bigger than a normal race weekend. It becomes a statement, a final demonstration, one last opportunity for Hamilton and Ferrari to show the entire world exactly what this car was capable of before Formula One changed the rules around them forever. And if Ferrari suddenly looks dominant there, the political storm surrounding these FIA decisions may become impossible to contain. Because then Formula One faces a question nobody inside the FIA wants to answer publicly. Did Ferrari actually cross the line? Or did they simply build the fastest idea the sport was not ready to stop in time?